So welcome everyone who's starting to log on. We're going to give a few more seconds or 30 seconds for everyone else to log on. Okay, I'm seeing the numbers start to slow down a little bit, so I'll briefly introduce myself. My name is Brooke. I'm a second-year research resident at the University of Michigan. So thank you all for joining us for this webinar, the Ask Us Anything webinar. We are planning right now to answer a lot of the questions that were submitted to us beforehand. We will be answering those questions live. If you do have questions during the webinar as well, feel free to type them in the chat. Craig Brown, one of our other residents, will try to answer as many of those as possible. In addition, when we're done, we'll be sending out an email to everyone who attended this with a link to the video because this will be recorded. And we can respond to any additional questions if you respond to that email with a question. That's all I have, so I'll hand it off to Dr. Damick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Damick. I'm the chair of surgery at the University of Michigan. I just wanted to briefly welcome you all to this informational webinar. I'll introduce the program a little bit, and then Paul Gager is going to say a few words, who's our program director. And I think the intention here is for us to just say hi and then get out of the way, because the focus of tonight should really be to hear our residents, and to hear directly from our residents, answer the questions that you all have. And that's absolutely important. So I will say just a few brief bullets about my vision as a new chair. I've been in the role now for 1 year. And the things that I'm trying to do at the University of Michigan are things that are kind of deeply held values to me. And that is to help build a surgery department that can take the unique talents of individual people. And I like to call this my golden nugget hypothesis, to take the deeply held, unique talents of people, residents, faculty, students who we work with, and build a platform that really helps develop their talent. And that's kind of like my passion, is to help people develop their potential, and to frankly help organizations help people develop their potential. And that comes along with some cultural values that are mentorship, valuing differences and diversity as key to that, because we know that we need different talents to come together to build excellence. And in addition, I have a vision of what it means to be a surgeon that very much is about being collegial, which I think kind of breaks from some of the, at least, stereotypes about surgeons out there. So those are the sorts of things that I'm trying to bring to the Department of Surgery in terms of its leadership and the culture that I'm building. And with that kind of brief intro, I'll turn it over to our current general surgery program director to say a few words, Paul Gager.
Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you as well. I'm Paul Gager, the program director here, and I was a resident here in this program, and feel that it was really, honestly, the most important thing that's ever happened to me professionally. It has given me incredible opportunities and perspectives that have really lasted for decades since then. And so I graduated in '98, was away for a year of fellowship, and then have been in faculty since. And I've been involved in the program in a leadership role for many of those years. And it's been an absolute honor to see the incredible sort of evolution and constant improvement of the program, built around an incredibly consistent core, which really gets at some of the values we hold dear here. And a lot of those were just espoused by Dr. Damick. And you know, our program goals are pretty simple. You know, we're all about making sure that you train to be the most compassionate physician you can be, and that you end up absolutely technically excellent, and develop amazing surgical judgment. And that's something that's really emblematic of our residents, many of whom you may have worked with as, you know, as faculty in your own department. And another major stress is to develop you as a leadership, an academic leader. Your talents around those research skills and leadership skills really get developed here in a very deliberate and meaningful way. So with that, I once again want to say welcome, And I'm really excited that you're here, and I look forward to meeting you in just a couple months down the road. And enjoy tonight.
Hey everyone, I'm Ryan. I am one of the fourth year residents and currently in my first year of research. I'm getting a master's degree in healthcare policy. I am honored to kick things off with the first batch of questions that were submitted previously. And those questions have to do with life in Ann Arbor, fun things to do around town, cost of living, the commute to work, and the culture of the program. So it's a bit of a grab bag of questions, and I'm going to work through them together with my fantastic classmate, Maya Anderson. So welcome virtually to Ann Arbor. Honestly, I love this place so much. I moved here from the Northeast and experienced an immediate huge quality of life boost. I went from sharing an apartment with 4 roommates. I now own a 3-story condo with an attached 2-car garage. And so obviously the cost of living here is much less than the bigger cities. With respect to housing, many residents start off renting and then work with a realtor to buy. Other residents just rent all the way through, and we live all around Ann Arbor in downtown and scattered in every direction around Ann Arbor. No matter where you end up living, the commute to the hospital in the morning is no more than 10 minutes, mostly through just flashing lights. And when the weather allows, I know many people, including myself, who bike to work. With respect to fun things to do around town, Ann Arbor has a little bit of everything. My favorite thing is hanging out in the outdoors. I'll kayak or tube down the Huron River. I do a lot of road biking to nearby towns. I've gone cross-country skiing in northern Michigan with one of my classmates. I've camped along Lake Michigan in Bear Dunes National Park, which is awesome. I just couldn't recommend it more. This is a beautiful state to live in. If you're a foodie, Ann Arbor has fantastic restaurants, a great bar scene, a big farmer's market every Saturday year round. If you're into music, you know, you can see some great bands perform at an intimate venue like the Arc in downtown Ann Arbor. And there's all the usual headliners in downtown Detroit, which is basically just a short car ride away. We've definitely got sports. We have the Big House. In case you already, you didn't already know, the Big House holds over 110,000 people, which is kind of hard to imagine in the time of COVID. But nonetheless, it's an awesome place to see a football game. The faculty are constantly handing out their tickets to the residents. I think I've used Dr. Damick's tickets 3 times, including to the Ohio State game last year. Not the result we wanted, but you've got great seats, Dr. Damick. Thank you so much for your tickets. And if you're not a football fan, I mean, the basketball games, the hockey games are awesome too. I'm probably getting close to the end of my 3 minutes, but to quickly address the culture of our program, the highlights of this place, in my mind, are my co-residents who I admire, respect, and adore, and the faculty who are all super approachable, down to earth, and care a lot about our training. So on that note, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. I really hope that I get to meet you in person soon. And I'll turn it over to Maya.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm Maya. I'm another one of the PGY4s and also a first-year research resident and also doing the master's program with Ryan. We see a lot of each other on Zoom these days. I wish more in person, but hopefully soon. In terms of life in Ann Arbor, I would echo a lot of what Ryan has already said. It's extremely affordable. I'm married, we have a dog, and I recently also became a homeowner. We live very comfortably on my single resident salary. I moved to Ypsi Township, which is one of the surrounding areas, after renting in Ann Arbor for a while. And I think my commute will actually be pretty similar. So about a 10 to 15 minute commute to the hospital, which is extremely doable, depends on traffic. But mostly we have no traffic during our commute times. Fun things to do. I mean, there is really something for everyone. My husband is a diehard Michigan football fans, so we go to a lot of games. We also go to a lot of concerts and festivals, and I would say there are plenty of excellent, affordable restaurants to try. And Dr. Gager has excellent recommendations, so you should ask. In terms of culture of the program, I do think that the culture of any place is really dictated by the people. And I think that people are the biggest strength of our program. So my family is all on the West Coast. I was actually raised in Anchorage, Alaska, and since my parents have moved to Seattle and my sister lives in San Francisco. And so my co-residents have filled in here as my family, and I consider them some of my very best friends, and I'm super glad to have them. There is a ton of collegiality, friendship, and mentorship, both formal and informal, and personal and professional, between our residents and our faculty, and between residents of different years, which I think is really great and a really unique feature. Our residency is really like a giant family, and I think we all really strive to take care of each other. Thank you for all of your questions, and I'm going to pass it along to Craig for the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So I echo everything they said. My name's Craig Brown. I'm one of the fifth-year residents. I'm in my second year of lab time, so 1 year after these guys. I am answering the question from Jacqueline Olive, and she asks, could you provide specific examples of how faculty mentor residents and residents mentor each other in and out of the operating room? So I'm super happy to answer that question, because I think that the mentoring at Michigan is one of the things that separates Michigan from other places in the country. And frankly, it's one of the best sort of biggest benefits of training here. I'll try to answer in two parts. So I'll start with in the operating room mentoring, and then try to talk quickly about out of the operating room mentoring, but I think people will probably touch on that throughout the webinar. The in operating room mentorship is unquestionably a focus of the department. I think the thing that I've told people in years past that is like the clearest example of that is the fact that the University of Michigan Department of Surgery employs a PhD researcher named Gurjeet Sandhu. She's actually on this call, thank God. She's wonderful. Literally her sole goal of life is to improve resident autonomy in the operating room. So her entire research platform is basically like driven towards improving our lives, and we feel that every single day. That permeates the entire department in terms of sort of the expectations that the faculty have for mentoring residents through operations and allowing residents autonomy in the operating room. And it's unquestionably a benefit and a distinct thing about Michigan that I think when our chiefs leave the program and they go to other places, they always come back and say, wow, I didn't realize how much autonomy we got relative to these other places. So definitely a big benefit. That is most exemplified, I think, in the fact that our chiefs throw every single stitch. They do the entire case and the vast majority of the time. We have very few fellows, which somebody will probably talk about later, but our chiefs are doing the Whipples. They're doing all the big cases, liver resections. Like they're the people who are actually pushing the case forward. And I think that that's because of many reasons, but Gurjeet is one of those big ones. In terms of resident to resident level mentoring, I think the best example of that in the operating room is that our ACS service, or our acute care surgery and trauma service, is sort of the pinnacle of resident autonomy for us. And the way that it's organized is we have two teams that alternate call every day, and one is composed of a PGY6 and a PGY3, along with junior residents and PAs and things to help with the rest of the work. But the operative experience is really focused on a PGY6 and a PGY3. And then the other team is a chief and a PGY3. And the expectation, and in fact, the practice, is that the vast majority of cases are done with the senior resident, either the PGY6 or the chief, taking the 3 through the case. And so that's, for people who aren't familiar, we log that as what's called a teaching assistant case. And our residents at Michigan graduate with usually 4 or 5 times as many TA cases as required by the American Board of Surgery. So our residents teach a lot. I logged my first TA case as a PGY2. I was actually a first month PGY2 when I logged my first TA case. So I think that that is just incredible. In terms of out of the operating room mentoring, like I said, people will probably touch on this in more detail, but I think the launch teams that we have are probably the best example of that. So without going into too much detail, basically we have this program at Michigan that involves a team of mentors, of faculty mentors, both in our department and out of the department, both surgeons and non-surgeons, whose sole job is to guide you forward in your career. And so we've had lots of residents have really formative experiences with these launch teams. And in fact, we've had several residents who got kind of midway through residency and realized that the trajectory that they were on for their career wasn't actually going to take them where they wanted to go. And oftentimes the launch team is the first group to say, is this actually what you want to be doing? And they steer them towards this sort of more appropriate trajectory for them. And I think it's really, really benefited the program overall. So that's sort of the best faculty resident mentor outside the operating room example that I can give. From mentor, peer to peer mentor, I'll tell you that it's not uncommon for our residents to publish papers in the academic setting as senior authors with junior residents as first authors, which is unheard of. I bet that's like, you're not going to find another program in the country that does that. And I think that that really speaks to how, one, we move our residents through the academic training paradigm to become independent researchers and run a team, but also to allow and sort of foster this relationship between senior residents and junior residents, both academically and in the operating room. So sorry for rambling. I'll end with that, and I'll pass it on to John.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Williams. I'm one of the PGY1 residents, so one of the new Gen Search interns, not so new anymore. And I am going to answer a question from Camilla Getter, who's asking what the operative experience is like for PGY1 and PGY2 junior residents. And I think Craig actually did a spectacular job kind of touching along a lot of this already. And I will say, as someone that's been here for a little bit over a month now, that the operative experience actually has far exceeded any expectations I ever had of being an intern in the OR, doing some serious operating. And I think that a lot of the structure of the rotations that we do as an intern are such that a senior resident, whether it be a chief or a PGY6 or even PGY3s or 4s, do a whole lot of teaching in the OR. I mean, earlier today, myself and Josh did 2 cases. Josh brought me to as the teaching resident, and I was there every step of the way doing the steps, some for the very first time. And I think that that environment is spectacular for operative learning and operative teaching. Being an intern, especially early on, is all about doing a lot of things for the first time ever, and I can ask for a better environment to learn those skills. And it's clear that I think everybody goes through this process and gains a lot from not just learning, then subsequently teaching as a resident. I came from the Northeast as well, just like Ryan Eaton has, and I'll say that in my experience as a med student, I got to interact with a lot of different residents from different programs in the Northeast, and not a single one of those programs, I feel, had the interns operating as much as I have the last couple of months. And as I'm sure some of you know, the ACGME requires a certain case threshold at a minimum after the first 2 years of general surgery residency, and no one ever has an issue hitting that number as a junior resident here. In fact, I think we exceed those numbers pretty significantly, and it shows from a technical standpoint. But happy to answer any other questions from an intern's perspective. I'm sure Joy is as well, my spectacular co-intern. And I'll also reiterate just really quickly that word family, I think, is probably one of the greatest theme words of this program. Literally hours after matching, I got phone calls and texts and emails from a whole lot of people that were welcoming me to this family and could be happier. So with that, I'm going to keep it moving and pass it along to Jess.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Millar. I'm one of the current PGY2s here, and we got a really awesome question from Sophia about what support looked like specifically for the residents during COVID. And I think that that's probably a question that a lot of people will have during interview season. What I can say is, as an intern during kind of the initial COVID crisis, we definitely felt super supported as residents. There was a lot of uncertainty, and our chiefs actually did a lot of the heavy lifting, making sure that all of us, especially at the junior level that were still in the hospital, were super well protected, very well supported. We did a lot of things very quickly to help support the residents, including, like I said, making sure that we had sort of clear leadership from the front with our chiefs, as well as then one of our attendings, Don Coleman, kind of serving as the residents' voice amongst the faculty and all of the higher up meetings that were occurring to make sure that the residents were being considered and taken care of during COVID. We did a lot to get residents out of the hospital. We found that, there's a lot of redundancy in a lot of our teams, and how could we get people out, keep people safe, keep people at home. And we all created different types of schedules to support ourselves as well as our patients during COVID. And then we also just did a lot of things to make sure that people that had families, that had children, that had medical conditions that made them higher risk were not in high risk areas, like seeing consults in the ED or taking care of COVID patients at all. And then the university also did a lot to help us as well, as far as offering up housing for people that couldn't go home. One of our co-residents actually, his girlfriend at the time was working in the medical ICU, and they didn't want to accidentally expose each other, and so he actually stayed at our Med Inn, which is our hotel that we have at the hospital, for 2 weeks, and that was completely provided by the hospital and by the university. And so I think with as much uncertainty as there was during COVID, I felt very there was someone always taking care of us, someone always looking out for us and making sure that we were keeping ourselves safe, keeping ourselves healthy. And also we did a lot of things to help support each other, as far as family nights on Zoom. Brooke had, can't remember if it was Tuesday or Thursday night conferences with all the juniors every week, just to make sure that we were still all doing okay, and just had a social hour every week. So we did a lot to help each other. And I think that that's a really important question, especially during this interview season, is in times of crisis, how do programs look out for one another and take care of each other? And I can say, I think we did a pretty good job. And so with that, I'm going to pass it along to Joy.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. I'm Joy. I'm one of the new general surgery interns, along with John. And I'm going to be I'm going to be addressing the question around efforts to increase diversity in surgery and how inclusion is being improved in the program. This is a really, really important question, and one that I care deeply about. And I remember on the interview trail just asking at every program, how does that program value diversity and inclusion, and what are the efforts? And I think, unfortunately, it's very easy to make strong statements about diversity and inclusion, and to kind of give lip service to the topic and say, oh, we care really deeply. But in my personal opinion, I think that actions and initiatives really show the values of the department. And so one of the things that I was truly very impressed about Michigan when I interviewed here was just the sheer number of ways in which diversity and inclusion have been pushed to the forefront, and the ways that there have been initiatives to address this issue. I remember when I first asked this during my interview day, the responses that I got were, well, we have our cultural and complications discussions, where we talk about ways that culture and race and ethnicity can sort of cause clashes in the clinical workspace. We have the HOPE Collaborative, which we're just starting, trying to engage young children in the Detroit area. We have Doctors of Tomorrow, trying to just plant little seeds of interest in medicine among high school students in the area. We have the new holistic hiring process, in which we are really trying to attract very diverse and excellent faculty candidates to Michigan. And we have Michigan Promise in place to ensure that they are set up for success once they get here. We have the new Leagues Fellowship that's spearheaded by one of our wonderful ADT residents, Val, trying to engage MS1s between first and second year summer who are interested in surgery, who are underrepresented minorities in medicine, in surgery. We have the new visiting clerkship where we have, where unfortunately COVID has derailed those particular efforts this particular summer, but we have, bringing URM applicants to Michigan to see what it's like. And I remember just feeling so wonderfully overwhelmed by all of the ways that not only, was it said that diversity and inclusion is important here, but there were actions and initiatives really to back up that spirit. And I think it was one of the big reasons that I really wanted to do my training here. And I think that with our current intern class, we're really a demonstration of how much effort and how much intentionality went into trying to create a surgical workforce that really reflects society. I mean, of our 7 interns, 4 are women, and of the 4 women, we have 3 Black women. And it's an incredible feat, and then it's an incredible feeling to be a part of a department that cares so deeply about diversifying surgery. And and on another note, I was packing up my bags and packing into boxes for Ann Arbor right around the time where we were having riots, and there was an increased energy in the Black Lives Matter movement around the continued killing of Black people in America by the hands of the police. And in that moment, in terms of the Department of Surgery here at Michigan, there was not only not only an email sent out on a formal statement, there was not only a town hall established for everyone to share their thoughts and opinions, but there have been weekly town halls since to continue a very intentional discussion around how the Department of Surgery can actively be engaged in anti-racist actions and actively be engaged in improving equity and improving inclusion. And I remember listening to that very first town hall and listening to how poignantly and eloquently residents and attendings express their feelings and their thoughts around what was happening in society. And I just remember feeling so grateful that I had matched into a program that had created this space for people to share their thoughts, people to be 100% themselves and be very open with their identity and how it impacts their experience in the department as a surgeon. And so I just, in that intentionality, I knew even before I had even gotten my bags to Ann Arbor that this department was a place where I could really be myself and bring all aspects of who I am. And kind of furthermore, once having arrived here, not only is the residency such a wonderful family and a community, but specifically among the URM residents who are here, we've definitely created a great community, and where we check in with each other. We had a melanin at Michigan barbecue, which we all got a chance to get together. We even had a happy hour at Dr. Newman's house, where residents, fellows, attendings were able to come together and sort of share about the experience of being a minority in surgery. So I think on so many fronts, Michigan has such an intentional and concerted effort to increase diversity in surgery. And also, one thing I think is very special is that Michigan is where I think as a department, we're very bold in the type of actions that we want to take. And we are okay with the fact that doing diversity, equity, and inclusion work, you're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to say the right thing or do exactly the right thing, but we're willing to try, and we're willing to, and we think that being that kind of being passive is not an option, and that we're going to actively engaging in what's happening in society and actively engaging and being in anti-racist and promoting equity on all fronts is something that the department is willing to do. And I think there's a reflection also in that, knowing that we can never fully achieve these things. There's no percentage that means that we've achieved all diversity or equity or inclusion, but we're constantly working towards that goal and willing to reflect and if there are missteps, willing to sort of look inward and try and move forward in the best way possible. So I think that diversity, equity, inclusion is a huge topic, and I'm really happy to chat with anyone out there more about this. Please feel free to reach out to me. I've only been here for 1 month and 6 days, so I also want to connect you with those who have been working on these efforts for many months, many years. But I think that I'm particularly proud to be a part of this department and all of its work in the DEI area. So hopefully that wasn't too long or rambly. I'm going to pass it on to Callie next.
Hi, I'm Callie Harbaugh. I'm one of the chief residents this year, and I'll be touching on a few questions. What does surgical autonomy look like, and the depth and breadth of our operative training, and then also touching on the balance between chiefs and fellows in the operating room, especially as the lead surgeon. And I'd say the best way to describe this is that we believe in graduated autonomy. You will have experiences in the OR in your first month of intern year. In your intern year, we get assigned level appropriate cases, but we're doing cases as the primary resident in those ORs. And I'd also say we highly encourage residents to come in and double scrub. We love having juniors and seniors in there together because there are always opportunities to learn in every case. And the more you do each of the cases, the more nuance you get from them. And the attitude in the OR is really that the attendings want us in there and they want us learning. Intern year is also about really getting experience with taking care of patients on the floor. However, we make it very intentional in terms of where you have high yield experiences learning both floor care as well as being in the operating room. And we are incredibly well supported with APPs. We have advanced practitioners on every surgical service. They help us a lot during the days to help offload so that all the residents can be getting to the ORs. We have no problem with the numbers, whether it's the 250 in the beginning of your first 2 years or chief level cases. I've already met most of my case numbers and I still have a year to go. As you progress further in residency, you'll again get more autonomy, and Craig was touching on this earlier, but we start doing teaching assistant cases really throughout residency, but really heavily in your fourth clinical year, your 6th year. Particularly on our acute care surgery and trauma rotations. You rotate with a PGY3 and a clinical 4 and a PGY3 and a clinical 5. And those are really special months because you build this relationship where the chief is really taking the mid-level resident or the junior residents through cases. And there's a lot of growth that happens in those rotations, but you always have faculty there and they're always there really mentoring and teaching you. In terms of breadth and depth, we are a referral center. We get some of the most complex cases in the state, and that's across the board on subspecialties. For those cases, you as the chief resident or as the resident are really the one in there doing those cases, whether it's Whipple's, complex liver cases, across the board, we're doing it. And you also get a wide breadth of cases. So like I said, we have all of the subspecialties and I feel we're strong in all of those. In terms of breadth, there are 2 areas that sort of historically we've had a little bit less experience as residents in. First, in terms of like the most straightforward cases, so if you think more about like community appendectomies and cholecystectomies and things like that, in our hospital, a lot of times we're getting like the appendectomy who has an LVAD. But to be really intentional about building that experience, but also getting junior residents in the OR sooner, we've added a new rotation, which is our community rotation. So one of the PGY2s spends a month at Chelsea Community Hospital with the group there. And that's been a really great experience from everyone that I've heard so far. The second area is penetrating trauma. And again, to really be intentional about our experience and our training, Dr. Gager has has really developed a partnership with Hurley. And so now as a PGY4, we spend a month out at Hurley and Flint, where the experience is definitely different than it is in Ann Arbor. And it really was a great rotation, both from sort of a trauma standpoint, but then also seeing what a different practice model looks like. With regard to the relationship between fellows and chief residents, I'll first say we really don't have a lot of fellows, and that again is a very intentional thing. Our program is really committed to the resident education. And so, for example, when my class were interns, we had an HPB fellow who was really great, but it did detract from case numbers in the HPB area. And so as a program, they decided to take away that fellowship. And so now we as chiefs are really the ones doing all of those cases. We do have fellows in transplant, vascular, thoracic, and endocrine. We have great relationships with all of them. I'd say on transplant, there have been several comments, but it's really a phenomenal opportunity, and you're operating with the transplant fellow, them as the attending and you as the chief resident. It's an awesome experience. Vascular, again, the fellows are fantastic. They are some of the most well-loved. And so we've really enjoyed working with them, and there's plenty of volume to go around between the vascular service and the VA. Same thing on thoracic, and then on the endocrine fellow, they actually sometimes they run their own practice as well, and so often they're doing like hernias and things like that with our more junior residents, which is a really great opportunity for our residents. And I think that's about all I had to say on it. So thank you so much for those questions, and then I will pass it on next to James Melvin.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm answering a lot of people's questions. It's come up in the chat a couple times too, which is really about, as a resident at Michigan, the question is, how do you fund your academic development time? How do you find a mentor? What research options are available? And is there any master's degrees available? So the first thing I'll talk about is funding. The first thing it's important is that no matter what you want to do for your research or what project you're interested in, it doesn't matter how unique or different it is, the department will fund your salary and benefits for the 2 years. They're guaranteed. If that's what you are looking to do for 2 years of research, which is by far the most common thing that we all do between years 3 and 4 of clinical time. And so that's a great opportunity. After that, in terms of funding, our department is in the top 3, I think, nationally in terms of money from the NIH in terms of funding. No, sorry, number 1, Dr. I wasn't sure. It's number 1. And there's 4 T32s that are commonly available to our general surgery residents to get in a part of and get money from the NIH for dedicated training programs. And I would say what I'm most impressed with our program is that almost 50% of our residents secure extramural funding through independent grants, both from the NIH and then different surgical societies. We also have the Collar Society, which is the Michigan Surgery Alumni Program, which provides residents with grants to support their research on a yearly basis as well. In terms of finding a mentor, it's really easy because we have a target-rich environment. There are so many funded faculty that are looking to recruit young junior surgery residents into doing research with them. And really, it's about you trying to find the best fit with a mentor that helps you succeed in your vision for what you want to get out of training and also what you're interested in from a research standpoint. And there's a lot of ways for that to happen in a way that's not just organic. The first is our junior faculty and other faculty members present their research often in Grand Rounds formats. And they also come into our junior conference didactics on Thursdays a couple of times a year to talk about their research and try to recruit residents to their labs. We also have 4 amazing institutions within the university and the department that kind of form collaboratives of faculty that have different research interests. Probably our most famous is our Center of Healthcare Outcomes and Policy, or known as CHOP. And that's where many residents go to work with a variety of faculty, both as a primary mentor and then other secondary mentors. We also have something called the CBATS program, which is our Center of Basic and Translational Science, and then another center in surgical education and training research, and then global surgery. And what this allows us to do is really find a strong avenue of multiple different faculty that can come together to support your project, both financially and in terms of sponsorship, getting you to national meetings, applying for your own grants, and providing physical space and academic mentoring as well. In terms of degrees, the most common degree that surgical residents get here is in healthcare outcomes and policy. It's a Master's of Science degree. Yeah, that's through the CHOP, through the Center of Healthcare Outcomes and Policy. There's also a lot of flexibility with us meeting your vision in terms of what you want to achieve, whether that's an MBA, a Master's in Business, or something in engineering. And we also have a new program with innovation and entrepreneurship as well. So there's a ton of opportunity. I had a lot of trouble finding a mentor for me because there were so many great options. Most faculty are funded, have huge labs, and are always looking for new recruits to join and sponsor. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sam and Brian. Thanks.
Hey guys, I'm Sam Rivard. I'm one of the PGY 5s now, so I'm in my 2nd year of research time. Brian and I have both been asked to kind of talk about what family life looks like in our program as well as in Ann Arbor in general. I have a 10-month-old daughter who I absolutely adore. I was pregnant during my PGY 3 year, and I was completely supported during my pregnancy. I did give birth during my research year, and again, I was completely supported during that time too. Being a pregnant operating resident was so much easier than I expected it to be. And again, all my attendings and co-residents were really supportive. If, I needed to leave the operating room to have a drink of water or go to the bathroom, because that happens a lot for pregnant women. But I felt completely supported throughout my pregnancy. And afterwards, when I gave birth, I had so many of my peers and my attendings giving me gifts to spoil my child. It's been really nice. I have a future Michigan surgery onesie from the department. I have a future Michigan CHOP fellow onesie from the department. So everyone really has spoiled my little one, which has been great. I just want to touch a little bit on lactation, because it's important for pregnant women to think about. But again, we're so supported in that department as well. The surgery department has a dedicated lactation room for surgery residents that is near the operating room, which is super fantastic to run to in between cases. And also during your ADT time, or your research time, we call it ADT, or academic development time, there's plenty of opportunities and space for you to do lactation as well, and pump. And our program has kind of nationally regarded guidelines that were created here by 2 chiefs that had just graduated about lactation for residents, and it's been really a nice support for that. But just to touch more on how Ann Arbor is for family life, I think it's fantastic. I actually went to undergrad here, so before I came to residency, I was so used to this being my college town that that is totally contrasted from the town that I live in now. And it's super family friendly. We go everywhere with our daughter, even during this COVID craziness. We take huge advantage of the Ann Arbor parks. There are so many. I think there's over 80 in Ann Arbor city limits. There are tons of swing sets, tons of play areas, great big open spaces that we love to go to. Things like the Ann Arbor Hands-On Museum is a children's museum that I know a lot of people with kids love to go to, so their kids can explore. The Big House in the summer usually puts on movies where they'll throw like Disney movies on the big screen, and everyone goes in their sleeping bags, and it's a lot of fun. There's Domino's Farm. So Domino's, the pizza company, has their headquarters here. And they have a petting zoo at their location here in Ann Arbor. So the kids love to do that. Really close by are the Detroit and Toledo zoos that are 45 minutes each. So you've got plenty of animals to touch and look at very close near us. In the summertime, the Huron River runs through Ann Arbor, and we love to go tubing, kayaking, canoeing. The kids love to splash in the water, in the beaches. It's a lot of fun. The public libraries here are fantastic. They have tons of story times. Right now they're doing them virtually, but it's fun for the kids. They have music classes. They have language classes for kids, which is amazing to me what little kids can say in Spanish that I can't. There are things like the botanical gardens you can take advantage of. My daughter loves to look at the flowers, and there's lots of teaching opportunities there about birds and things. And then I know people have touched on it before, but Michigan sports, the football team especially, is huge here. But there's also other sports that we like to take our daughter to. So things like gymnastics, basketball, soccer, literally any sport you can go to. A lot of the sports that are not kind of the big money makers, you can actually get free tickets to, and that's really fun for the kids to look at professional athletes and look up to them. And then I just wanted to put in a plug for Detroit. I know it's not, the #1 big city in the United States, but it's actually a city that's really picked up in the last, I'd say 5 to 10 years. And there's so much to do there. There's something called Belle Isle, which is a nice little island in the river there between Canada and Michigan. There's beaches there, and there's an aquarium there, and that's a lot of fun. There's an art museum that's fantastic. And really, Detroit has starting to have some big open green spaces for kids to play in too. So we really love to go explore there as well. But I'll pass it on to Brian because he has 2 sons of his own, and he has a similar perspective about love in Ann Arbor, but I want to give him time too.
Thanks, Sam. Hey guys, I'm Brian Fallon. I'm in Sam's year, so I'm a 5th-year resident. Just entering my 2nd year of research time. As Sam mentioned, I have 2 kids, a 2-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy. And I have a spouse who works full-time. My 4-year-old boy was born 2 weeks into residency. So that for me was a little bit of a shocker. So I was very interested in finding a place that would be welcoming to families, because I knew coming in that we were going to have a family. The support that I got from my chief and my whole team, really week 2 of residency, just for me sort of demonstrated the culture of this place, particularly with regard to families. So it was, I received a phone call from my wife just as we were getting out of critical care summer school. And she said, hey, just saw the OB, 39 weeks, we're gonna go get induced today because I've got high blood pressure, which I'm sure she'll be delighted I'm telling you all. But she, so she was on her way in. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a new intern. What do I do? Like, I've got cases the rest of the day. And so I texted my chief and he said, go be with your wife, we'll cover it. And he goes, no, it's okay. I said, no, it's okay, I'll just go. I'll check in on her, make sure she's okay, and get back for the case. And he said, no, I don't want to hear from you until after your baby's born. And so that was, for me, just demonstrated, and I think that has continued to play out, the culture and the support that people who have new babies, who have existing babies, how strong that, how important people realize that is to all of us who have families. One of the things also that's really, that I've appreciated about this place is that even though surgery residency for everyone is hard, every surgery residency everywhere has early mornings. You're going to have some late nights, long days. There's a real strong culture here at Michigan to get people out of the hospital. So if you don't need to be in the hospital, we want you at home, spending time with your families, with your dogs, with your own personal habits, whatever it is you have, whatever it is you want to do out of the hospital. We all feel that that's a really strong component to support for every individual person. And that for me has helped me see my kids a lot more than I think I very easily could have at other places where I think maybe there's less of that focus. So that's really permeated chief class after chief class, where they say, your cases are done, go home, go see your family. Another really nice thing that I've noticed is that we do have a lot of residents with families here, both residents with spouses, significant others, and residents with kids. And what that translates to is a really strong social life that centers around that. So it's a little, obviously COVID has changed a lot of things, but prior to that, really there were so many social events that were at kid-friendly hours, from afternoon barbecues where you brought your kids to daytime hangout sessions at the park. And oftentimes those would transition to later night things for those after the kids went to bed. But there were at least an acknowledgement that those of us who have kids might get stuck at home if all these things all the social life starts at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And that's really been great to get to know, particularly for my wife, who is not from Michigan and really was as she's from Puerto Rico, and was a little nervous about getting to know people in Ann Arbor, where she didn't previously know anyone. And that social life has really transitioned or grown, not from just a social life for me, but also a social life for her, a social life for my kids, who now have best friends who are co-resident siblings or co-resident children. So that just makes, I think, strengthens that real family atmosphere. And one last thing that I think we should mention is that even though Ann Arbor seems like it's totally in the middle of nowhere, a small little town in the middle of Michigan, I lived in New York for 7 years before, partly for med school and partly for work. And I'm actually closer to an airport here, a major international airport here, than I ever was to any of the 3 New York airports, living in the center of Manhattan for 7 years. So that really has made it's much easier for us to get places to visit our friends. For my wife's family, particularly from Puerto Rico, to easily get here on a direct flight. So I think that's an underappreciated factor that for those coming from out of town, I think is a really important thing to consider. So thank you for that question. And with that, I will turn it over, I believe, to Joss for the next question.
Thanks, Brian. I'm Jocelyn Vu. I'm a chief here this year, and I am answering a question from Ashley Choi that says, what makes a Michigan candidate? For instance, any unique attributes that help an applicant stand out as a potential resident at Michigan? And I thought a lot about this. I think that some of these things that I'm going to talk about, it may be a little bit hard to know how to convey that to us, especially as our interviews are going to be virtual this year with the COVID pandemic, but I'll run through them. But I thought that people who are other focused, so when you're with co-residents who are generous, they want to give more than they receive, that they end up really contributing to the culture, and people who really think first to serve others end up actually reaping that back in dividends, because you want to be around them, you want to give to them because they contribute so well to our culture. On a related note, people who can look past the negative parts of residency and can't, who are positive, they don't fall into the trap of feeling sorry for themselves because of the hard work that we do. Residency is a lot of work, but when you work with people who, genuinely love what they do, and they can even see the hardest parts of what our job is as a meaningful part of training, that can inspire. I know it's inspired me working with many of my co-residents to be grateful for the amazing job that we get to do at an amazing place. I think people who don't view residency as just a stepping stone to get to being an attending, people who they see it instead as a way to get clinical and technical training, but also a place to develop themselves as future leaders in surgery. So they want to pick up tangible skills, especially in leadership and in research skills, in learning how to manage health systems and learn those operation system skills. And so they're actively seeking something just other than learning how to be a surgeon, which you also get wonderful training in here. I'm almost done. People who are secure in themselves, because people who are secure are coachable. People who are secure know that they can take feedback because their performance that day or what people think of them doesn't define them. And so that they know that they are hardworking and principled and have good values and can accomplish things. They don't get sidetracked when they have a misstep or a mistake, which is something that we're all going to do. And finally, on that note, that I think the real key thing, and this is something that you can bring forward when you interview with us, when you communicate with us, is that knowing yourself is currency. We at Michigan have all of these amazing resources to build you and invest in you and help you reach your fullest potential. But when you're talking to applicants, it can take a little bit more effort when someone doesn't really know themselves and they say, well, I'd be interested in basic science or health surface research or really anything you can offer me. You're like, well, what is it that you actually want? So when you have a clear vision of what you want and how you can use your strengths to contribute into the world, that makes us think that someone is special. It sets you apart as an applicant, and it's really exciting when you can find someone who knows themselves and their strengths, and they have an idea of what they need to get them where they're going. So with that, I think I might be the last one, and I'll turn it back over to Brooke for some closing remarks. But thank you so much for tuning in. We're so excited to talk about our program, and we hope to meet you all in some way in the future.
Thank you so much, Joss. Thank you so much, everybody. The one thing that you all can't see by watching each of our talking heads is how we interact with each other. And I just want to say that this truly is my family, and I'm so happy to be able to see their faces despite the pandemic, and hopefully we'll be able to interact in person again. I will now give it over to Dr. Gager.
So that was a great hour for me, because I am really proud to hear the pride I just heard. I think it should be meaningful to everybody out there that you're hearing honest resident reflections, and everybody's very happy and proud here. I'm not going to pretend that things are always perfect here. The state of the world is difficult, but what I will guarantee you is that this program tries harder, and the culture here is more genuine and intentional about making things better than you'll find almost anywhere else. And that's why I'm still here for so many years, because it's a fantastic place to work, to live, and to grow. And so I look forward to seeing all of your applications. Dr. Damick.
Well, first of all, let me thank you all for joining us. All the residents, I agree with Paul. It was just fantastic to listen to you speak with such pride about your program. And for all the questions, I really tried to keep up with as many as I could, but it was moving fast. So I apologize if I miss your questions. Some of the questions were relating to other forums. This is going to be a tough year for applicants. And so, Paul and I and the residents of this, literally, I think Brooke and I schemed this idea on like a Twitter direct message, because we're all trying to figure out all different ways that we can create different forums to help you meet us and understand us. So we'll be rolling, like everybody else, we'll be trying to be creative and roll out new forums over the fall, and especially into the recruitment season. We'll really scale that up. And, if you're invited we don't exactly know what our virtual interview process will be, but we're going to work really hard to give you a lot of information, virtual tours, things like that. So to get you as much information as you can to guide in what's going to be a weird year and tough decisions without on-site interviews. So I'll just leave it at that and say, like Paul, I actually trained in this program. I have a deep love for this general surgery program, and take a lot of pride in the quality of the people that we produce, both in terms of, they're really, really good surgeons, and they are accomplished scholars and change agents in different ways, and just really good people. And that's really important to me. So I'm really proud of all you guys. Thank you for being here to represent our program. The one thing that I'll say, whenever we get a faculty, and I'm just thinking of like some of our junior faculty who come from the outside and come from other institutions, after about like 3 months, they say, now I get it. I see why the faculty here are so productive and successful. It's the residents, right? They're like the secret sauce of Michigan surgery. And I'm like, yep, it is. Like it's a trade-off. We give resources, time, and mentorship, but we get really talented, passionate people. And the combination of those two is I think unbeatable. So thank you all. Am I giving the final word, Brooke, or do you have the final word?
You have the final word.
All right. Well, it's 8:57, so we will give you 3 minutes of your life back, and we'll see you all at the next venue. Thank you all for being here.